Grandmother's Monsters. The Cupboard. My grandmother loved to use freaky stories to prevent any kids that were in the house to stay out of certain things. I guess she thought it was easier to scar us for life than it was to take a belt to our ass. Don't get me wrong, either is highly effective. But I loved stories, so I would find things to do that would trigger tells to make me behave. For years, I thought the Hollow Man, an entity made up of dead human skin that flakes off during our day-to-day life. Sometime at night, according to grandmother, they all come together to form a shadow of human skin flakes, moving from under my bed to the closet and down the dark hallways of a sleepy house to the living room looking for more. At night just before bed, she would hold my hand and tell me the Hollow Man likes the younger ones, so the younger the child the worse it could be, and that's why I needed to stay in bed at night in the rare case it wanted living skin. Because if I was up and running around in the dark and was to run into this thing, I could become its next meal. And then came the guilt trip. Son, think of the effect it will have on your poor grandmother's heart, if I was to come in your room the next morning and you were just a pile of bones. Just think of what that would do to this old woman's heart, so please stay in bed for both of our sakes. As the years went by, I thought the old woman's stories were that. Just stories. That is until she passed away, leaving me a book filled with illustrations and stories about creatures that roamed the night. That's when I knew the stories were real. The cupboard. Just about every house has one, a place where clean dishes sleep and sometimes old kitchen junk. The silly things that we pick up from time to time on the dollar aisle or order from infomercials. The as seen on TV, stuff, the things that we think will make our lives easier, but we end up using 1 or 2 times and it ends up in the cupboard. We used to call it scam TV, but in the end we always fell for it. Ours was a graveyard of such items. The great cupboard graveyard on the wall. As a kid I used to rummage through the items tucked away, sometimes I would find other uses for them. As they say, a child's imagination is limitless. After some time, grandmother asked me to stop, giving me a stern warning. Horrible things grow and live in there. You didn't mess with the Reynolds Wrap aluminum ball, did you? I hadn't, to be honest. I didn't even know it was in there. She reached in, pulling it out and showed me, saying my mother and her mother has been doing this to keep the thing that lives in there happy. She would sit a nicely made ball of silver wrap on each corner of the cupboard. I don't think much about it until one night, when we were having dinner. So why does it need a ball of foil? I asked. Grandmother set her spoon down and thought for a moment, reluctantly saying, I guess the thing that lives in there needs something to kick around. You don't want it to get to thinking about what's on the other side of the door. However, curious, I dropped the subject. Each night right before bed I would hear sounds coming from the kitchen, and sometimes during the day. Oddly, never when anyone was in there. I would think to myself, whatever lived in the cupboard and kicked the foil ball, didn't care much for people. The kitchen became a very creepy place for me. Each time I would walk in, I felt as if there were eyes on me. At times I would feel something similar to a cat brushing up against my bare skin. We didn't have a cat, and that's another story. Now grandmother at times was asked to bake a cake for the church. It was always hard for her to say no to someone that wanted cake. It so happens that night I had missed most of dinner and she was a stickler for showing up on time. But I smelled my weakness, grandmother's 7UP cake. Oh God, this was my devil in a Sunday hat and one of my simple addictions as a youth. Later that night I snuck into the kitchen hoping to steal a slice. I knew better than to run off with the whole thing, because if she caught me, her wrath would have been far worse than running into the Hollow Man. As I popped the top on the Tupperware cake box, I heard a thumping sound coming from the cupboard. With the knife in one hand staring lustfully at grandmother's cake, I hear another thump and another. Each thump got hard and harder, and with each thump the cupboard door would open just enough to see in. Hoping to see what was kicking the foil ball, I tried to peep in the crack as it got wider and wider. Until one of the silver balls popped out of the crack and hit the floor, rolling to a stop at my foot. I reached down to pick up the silver foil ball, noticing little dents all over its once smooth surface. That's when I heard a voice, a deep, broken old voice. "Give me the ball," it said. Still holding the ball in one hand and the cake knife in the other, I walked toward the cupboard. The night had changed too quickly. The cake knife I had planned to use to violate grandmother's cake, now could be my only protection against the foil-obsessed creature living in the cupboard. As I started to lose my appetite, the voice said again, "Give me the ball, give me the ball." Using the tip of the cake knife, I pulled the door to the cupboard open, revealing a grey creature standing about 10 inches tall, long thin arms and hands. As I looked into its blinking eyes, its face reminded me of what a dog's head would look like, skinned and glued back together. Along its back the creature's spine protruded from its tightly pulled skin. The thing looked like it hadn't eaten in years. I almost felt sorry for it. Looking at me, blinking its huge eyes, it asked again. "Give me the ball," I responded. "Do you want a piece of grandmother's cake? After all, I thought this thing needed something to eat." "Give me the ball," it responded to my caring question. In a rougher, darker voice it said, "Give me the ball, child." "What if I don't?" I asked. "Give me the ball, or I will take your eyes. After all, they are something round and shiny and will entertain me, boy." I quickly tossed the ball back into the cupboard. Its long grey hands reached along the wall of the cupboard, grasping the end and pulling it shut with a bang and then opening it slightly. The hand had to have extended twice its length to do this. This was a truly disturbing sight for a child to see. As it did, it left me with a few parting words: "Stay out of the kitchen at night, boy. Or I may decide to play with your eyes. Maybe I will come visit you in your sleep, pop them out and kick them around your room. Night after night, don't you worry, I will stick them back in, that is until I get hungry. Now go, child, and let me play with my silver ball." Right as the creature closed the door to the cupboard the rest of the way, I saw the evil grin of a very happy creature. At this point, I had lost my need for cake and headed toward the bedroom with the cake knife in hand. Grabbing a flashlight along the way, I quickly got under the covers of my bed and made a tent, where I planned to stay up and read until the sun comes up. There was no way I could go to sleep, thinking as soon as closed my eyes this thing would be on top of my face, prying my eyes open, popping them out with a tool he had probably made from foil, and then proceeds to kick them around the room, until he got hungry. Over the year, I lost an incredible amount of weight. I think at some point grandmother had become extremely worried, but I never told her about the encounter with the thing in the cupboard. Maybe part of me thought it could have been low blood sugar or a rampant imagination. That is until grandmother passed away and I saw the thing that lived in the cupboard in grandmother's book of monsters. My cupboard has silver foil balls in it, does yours? If your eyes feel dry, something might be playing with them as you sleep.